Well, good evening, everyone. It's 5:15, and I would like to call the March 13th, 2025 work session of the Staunton City Council to order. Item 1, I will now entertain a motion to approve the work session and regular meeting agendas.
Madam Mayor,
Councilor Woods.
I move to approve the work session and regular meeting agendas as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Mr. Kessinger, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Ms. Woods.
Aye.
Mr. Overholzer.
Aye.
Ms. Park.
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Arrowood.
Aye.
Mayor Edwards.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Kessinger. That takes us to item 2, an update on the long-range transportation plan, Staunton Augusta Waynesboro Metropolitan Planning Organization. Ms. Beauregard.
Mayor Kaufman's going to introduce this item this evening.
Terrific.
Yeah, so we've got Paula Melister here. She is the Director of Transportation from the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission, and she'll give you all an update on the long-range transportation plan.
Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. As Amanda stated, I'm the Director of Transportation at the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission, and we staff both the SAW MPO and the Metropolitan Planning Organization up in Harrisonburg and Rockingham. I shared a similar presentation with all of you last fall about our long-range transportation plan, and I'm thankful that you invited me back to talk about this next phase. I'm going to try these slides and see if this will work. Perfect. For those of you who are new to council and members who have not served with the SAW MPO before, I'll give you a brief overview of what our organization does here in the cities of Staunton, Waynesboro, and Augusta County. As you can see from this map, our planning area encompasses the major transportation corridors and connects our communities to the key arterial roads throughout the region, like US 11 and 250. We are the regional transportation planning body, so we work on transportation projects of all modes: bike, walk, vehicle, highway, all things transportation. The MPO has a policy board that's comprised of elected officials and high-level staff from our member jurisdictions. As you can, lost my place there. From each locality, and our meetings for the policy board and the technical advisory committee each meet monthly. Mr. Arrowood serves as the representative from Staunton City Council, and he is also currently serving as the chair of our policy board. Senior staff from the city manager's office attend the policy board meetings, and planning staff attend the technical advisory committee meetings to help us make decisions. The MPO conducts both long and short range planning. An example of a long range plan is the development of the region's 25-year transportation plan, also known as the LRTP, which we update every 5 years. During my last visit, I mentioned that we began the process in May, and this takes about 18 months to update. It has a 25-year horizon of planning, but it is updated every 5 years so that we can make sure projects are in line with costs and conditions in the region that are ever changing. The plan outlines the region's current and future transportation needs and possible transportation projects that could be constructed based on the available funding over that 25-year planning period. It covers all modes of transportation, from driving a car, walking, biking, riding one of our Bright buses, and the plan is a comprehensive plan, but for our regional transportation. I don't have my right glasses on, so I apologize if I can't see what I'm looking at. One of the major goals of our LRTP update is public engagement. We want to make sure that this plan represents the needs of all of the members of our community in Staunton, Waynesboro, and Augusta County. And so in addition to reaching out to community members to get feedback on their vision, which we did last fall, we want to confirm that we got that right by showing them a list of projects that came from those vision goals. So we are here in phase 2 of the LRTP update. We have collected feedback from the community to create a vision for the future needs of the region. And then using the goals that we developed in that process, we have compiled a list of proposed projects, working with staff from all of our localities and VDOT to find a list of projects that represent those needs that were reflected in the community feedback. The final plan will come later this year. We'll write a draft of the plan, release that to the public for comment, and make sure that everything that was addressed in those first 2 phases gets included in that plan. These were the content. This is the content of the summary of what we heard from phase 1. So the public survey asked individuals in the community to share what their areas of concern were, as well as things they'd like to see in the future in our region. These comments represent the feedback that we found most common from respondents in Staunton and addressing areas in and around the city. This looks like a long list, but this is what the list looked like for each of the localities. So we see quite a bit of a theme throughout walking and biking issues in and around the downtown area and the Greenville Avenue corridor, congestion issues also along that Greenville Avenue and Richmond Avenue corridor, and then safety issues in and around downtown, which largely did relate to biking and walking. So you can see quite a bit of overlap there of those areas of concern. So these comments helped inform our staff's identification and recommendation of those projects to add to the list for community needs. The goals that came out of phase 1 are listed here. We want to address safety in the region, efficient system management, which means making sure that our roadways are getting people where they need to go in a timely manner and are working as they're intended. Accessibility for members of our community who may use a mobility device or have to navigate sidewalks that might not be ADA friendly. Land use coordination, economic development, and environmental sustainability. As part of phase 2, we've created a new public engagement platform so that we can collect that feedback on these specific projects in a more engaging and dynamic way. This engagement platform is hosted through a platform called Social Pinpoint. It's the first time that we've used this platform, so we're hoping that we'll get a lot of good feedback and we can learn how to use this for future engagement projects all over the region in the future. The key feature of this is that all of the projects are mapped and are on an interactive display. So you can click on each project based on where it's located, see an image of the intersection, sidewalk, or area that it's addressing, and then read a description of the project and provide your feedback. Here's an example of the interactive project map and study map. Each of these icons represents a different type of project, with yellow traffic light icons for intersection projects, roadway projects with the blue icon, a green icon to represent both pedestrian and biking projects, and a purple icon for future studies. You can click on either of those icons on any of those projects on the map, and you'll see a summary here of the project. This is an example from Delphine Ave in Waynesboro. There's an image there of the intersection to help people orient themselves with what they're looking at, because sometimes reading these project descriptions are not easy to follow, even for transportation professionals like myself. And then when they click on that marker, it gives them the option to complete the survey and provide feedback. When you click on a project icon, you'll see a thumbs up or a thumbs down, a simple yes or no, do you like this project? And what would you like us to know about it? Giving that open-ended option allows us to collect feedback about what particularly is troublesome about that intersection, or do they think that this project will or will not address the needs that they have for that intersection? When you click on a study, you get a different question. And this question asks you how you would prioritize this study. We take these studies and look at each of them over a number of years to prepare them for the next 5-year update. And so it's helpful for us to understand where the highest needs in the community are so that we can study those sooner rather than later. There's also an open-ended block there to provide comments about the project in general. This is a list of all of the projects that are included in the LRTP proposed project list in the Staunton area. For the sake of time tonight and your attention span, I will not read all of these to you. though they might be more interesting than some other things that I've been reading lately. But those are all listed on the website. You can actually click on the map, but you can download this as a PDF as well, so you can read each one by region. This is the same list for the study areas. There's fewer of those, so I'll point out that the two primary areas for study that were recommended in Staunton are the US Route 11 and Woodrow Wilson Parkway intersection and the Augusta Woods Drive Shared Use Path Study. So those would be potential studies that the SAW MPO would conduct in a future year to prepare estimates and concepts of how we could fix those so that they would be ready for potential funding opportunities in the future. Throughout the month of March, we have several engagement activities that are available for the public and for you to join. We had a very successful meeting at the Staunton YMCA a few weekends ago. That was a great opportunity to talk to people and to meet people where they are instead of trying to get folks to come to a traditional evening public meeting. But we did hold one of those as well at Stewart's Draft High School and got some feedback from folks in the county there. And the last meeting will be March 29th at the Waynesboro YMCA. Those are Saturday mornings, so anyone can stop in. It's an open house style meeting. There's no formal presentation, but our staff will be there to guide folks through the different project boards, answer questions, and just give general information about the purpose of this plan. So what I'm here to ask you tonight for is your help in reaching your constituents and members in the community to help get more engagement in this process so that we can make sure that the project list is representative of the needs of all members of the city of Staunton. As I mentioned, you can share those comments on that website. The website also has a social media and email template that you can download and share with your organizations. That project list and study list is provided there to download and read more in depth. And you can sign up to receive email updates as we move through the rest of this process. So that's really all I had for you tonight. I'm happy to answer any questions you have, both about the LRTP or the role of the SAW MPO in our region. And I hope that you'll come out to our last meeting or at least fill out the map markers in the areas in Staunton that are most important to you.
Any questions from counselors? Comments?
Yeah, I would highly commend the work that you're doing in the survey, that it's not just a simple yes or no question, that you're asking for direct input. Nothing's more frustrating than just a yes or no question and not a depends.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thank you. We learned a lesson a few years ago that we asked for yes or no, thumbs up, thumbs down on a project, and we got an overwhelming amount of negative feedback, and we were confused by that. And it turns out that the project description was confusing and that people didn't understand what the project was trying to do. So that helped us understand that they weren't opposed to the project, that we just needed to do a better job of making those projects understandable to people outside of our office. So we really tried to do that this year, and I hope that those projects make sense to those who live in and around the community here.
What does the process look like after you get the results of the survey and you have some kind of prioritized list of projects? The subsequent steps for funding and the various state agencies that have to weigh in, what does that look like?
Yes, absolutely. So the next step, once we have the public engagement phase closed, we're working with consultants from an engineering and transportation firm to score and rate projects based on those criteria of those 6 goals that we outlined. So the list will be prioritized by how well each project meets those needs. Those are aligned very well with the state's Smart Scale funding program through VDOT. So we know that hopefully the projects that come out at the top of that list will be very well aligned with the goals of that program and therefore be more likely to get funded when we submit those for the next round. We also will use the public engagement that we hear from the survey and the responses, and our policy board will use that information to make their ultimate decision on the approval of the final list. And then that list just really serves as a guide for how we will prioritize projects to put in for funding for the next couple of years. Each locality has a certain number of projects they can submit through the Smart Scale project, as well as the PDC, and the projects that are highest ranked on that list will be the first ones that we submit.
Do any other questions from counselor? Thank you so much, Ms. Mellister. We hope
Thank
to
you
see
for
again
having me.
Thank you for coming. Moving on to item 2, nope, I'm sorry, moving on to item 3, a discussion on streetlights and dark skies initiatives. Ms. Beauregard.
Yeah, this item was added at the request of
Mhm.
Councilmember Corey Park,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna go ahead and let her introduce this item.
Okay. Okay, should I just read the description for the?
Yeah, sure, that'd be fine.
Okay. So the last time this topic was in front of City Council was during a work session on September 14th, 2023, when the Public Works Director provided information on Dominion Energy's LED replacement and developing a Stanton streetlight preference sheet. Most recently, the topic of a dark skies local ordinance and types of streetlights that support a dark skies initiative have come up related to the Edgewood Road Sidewalk project and discussions about subdivision plans in the city. At the February 13th, 2025 City Council meeting during the public hearing on a special use permit for 206 Frontier Drive, parking lot lighting was mentioned, and Tim Hartless, planning manager, stated the staff could work on amendments to strengthen lighting requirements. The dark sky movement is a campaign to reduce light pollution. Examples of the stated advantages of reducing light pollution include an increased number of stars visible at night, reducing the effects of electric lighting on the nighttime environment, improving the health and safety of humans and wildlife, and reducing energy usage. Implementation of dark skies initiatives can include amendments to the portions of the city code and/or creation of some new policy. So I just want to thank the city manager for including this tonight. And basically just touch base with my fellow counselors to implore city staff and the city manager to possibly begin research on best practices and possible changes to the ordinance that could be necessary to reduce light pollution to make Stanton more dark sky friendly.
Any comments? I was going to ask Mr. Hartless if he had anything to add. I think in the last meeting, we talked about integrating some of the best practices from the Dark Skies organization that Ms. Holberg had shared with us, and integrating those into our city code to give guidance to staff with zoning changes perhaps.
Yeah, this would just be first steps
For 10.
to allow them
Okay.
to begin the discussions. I
Yeah, while
think.
staff's looking for tonight is
Okay.
there's 2 pieces. There's the Dominion piece, which is kind of that
Mhm. Yeah.
streetlight kind of like list. And that's a piece that Dave Irvin and Public Works would kind of spearhead. And then there's
Okay.
the other piece that community development would be spearheading, which are more of the local ordinances and what Mr. Hartless was speaking to 2 weeks ago. And so what we're looking for this evening is just a head nod from you all to, yes, please pursue these, come back with some processes and possible ways to move forward with these initiatives. And so we don't really have any details tonight, but
Mhm.
Tim Hartless is standing
Yeah.
behind the
Yeah.
column there. I don't know if he wants to say
Mhm.
something.
I was gonna say exactly what Ms. Beauregard just said.
Right.
We're looking for a little bit of direction. We're happy to look at implementing some of these dark skies initiatives into our lighting requirements. It's really 3 separate issues. There's the lighting within the existing lighting within the public street, lighting for new residential developments that eventually will be part of the public street.
Right.
And then you've got lighting on privately owned development, which would be commercial development, multifamily development. And it could even regulate lighting in single family if that's the route you wanted to go. But tonight we're just looking for some direction so that we know kind of how to proceed and what you'd like us to look at.
Tim, this is an item, we've had a lot of lead time on this from Dominion too, because they've expressed that they were looking to replace the sodium halides, the big inefficient, less efficient lighting in there with LEDs. And they were reaching out saying that you can either, the way it was in the past was you can either just go with their default, they're going to pick it, but they also have alternatives that we can pick from. Is it still the case?
Yeah, Dominion has a catalog
Yeah.
of fixtures. So it would, best route is to pick a fixture that's within their catalog so that
Right.
it's something that they have in stock and can just go replace without needing to come talk to anybody in the city and get an approval for anything.
And this catalog has lumen amounts and whether it's a cutoff and
Yeah,
what
yeah.
degree and all that.
All the fixtures that we used on Central Avenue, Churchville Avenue, those are all fixtures that are within the Dominion catalog that we picked.
Is the Dominion catalog, is that part of the, what is it, the Virginia Energy Purchasing Group? Is that what you're talking about?
I'm not certain if it's part of that. Usually it's an online catalog that Dominion has that they provide to us as we're looking at picking fixtures.
Now, there's been, I know that at an event I was at in the past, there's a group of citizens that are extremely interested in reducing light pollution over time and that. And I think we may want to look into the citizen input on this as well, because there are a lot of people who this is their particular passion. And Leslie, I'd reached out and asked what form that could be, whether it's a sort of a temporary panel kind of thing or a group. What did you have any suggestions along those lines? It's not like we want to form a separate
Right.
commission on this, but just sort of an advisory.
Yeah, I'd like to come back and kind of, one thing we want to do is reach out to other jurisdictions that have done
Mhm.
kind of the Dominion catalog. We haven't done that yet. And so I'd be curious to see kind of what their process was in that piece at the very least. So I'd like to come back to you with some ideas about that pretty soon.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
For
are
sure.
really lucky in Stanton because Sarah, who's here
Sarah
for the last
Holberg,
meeting,
yeah.
Holberg, she's actually a delegate with the Dark Skies Initiative, like an official delegate, and she's offered to volunteer and share her expertise with this. So I think it would be great to put together a panel or something where we could get input.
Yeah, use our local
Yeah.
resources in that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, just,
Head nods.
Yes, yes, please
Yeah.
move forward with that.
Yeah.
I don't
Anyone
see a nod
against
from
it?
Adam.
Would
Uh,
this-
Counselor Campbell, did you
Would
want?
this go through planning commission? I feel like we're jumping the gun a little bit.
initially, I would think, yeah.
This request goes through planning commission.
That's a question for Leslie.
So the initial step would be through planning commission.
Well, I'm just, I mean, we have an opportunity now. We're updating the comprehensive plan.
Right.
This could be a perfect opportunity to go through that. If we
Right.
need a special committee, that could be an action item. I'm just curious about the order of events.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Mhm.
As you noted, we are going through the update of the comprehensive plan, and actually this is one of the items that has come up at our first public open house on the comp plan. A lot of people spoke about needing to address lighting. So that is, something that's ongoing now that will continue to get public input on that plan and on lighting. At this point, we're just looking for a thumbs up, as the manager said, to proceed with gathering some information. Once we bring that back to you, then that would need to be in a regular meeting, and then you could direct the planning commission to work on ordinance changes.
Thumbs up. Yes.
What, just curious, so the only lighting guidance we have now is on the overlay districts, correct?
It's very minimal in the zoning ordinance, except in the entrance corridors. You are
Okay.
correct.
I'm just thinking back to when we had the issue with, was it the Fairfield Hotel that
Oh, yeah.
wanted the LED lighting? Yeah,
That was lighting the face of the building,
Mhm.
maybe?
there was an LED strip,
Yeah.
something that had to do with
Okay.
the Marriott brand.
It was a blue
But that was,
LED, yeah.
but that was associated with the overlay district that.
That is correct.
Okay.
That's an entrance corridor.
I think whatever the recommendation, it just needs to be a comprehensive approach.
Yeah.
That looks at the standard street lights provided by Dominion for streets, looks at parking lots, commercial structures, tries to address all the instances and provide over the entire city
Yeah.
compliance with best practices for dark sky.
But we're looking at two different avenues. One would be
Right.
changes to our ordinances,
Right.
such as
Yeah.
the zoning and subdivision, and then a policy with Dominion power, which is
Right,
completely separate.
Right.
And can that, if we're gonna do this, I would like to see policy related to, with city input of which, I guess, classification of roadways we feel are appropriate to light and which ones we do not feel are appropriate to light, like having a hierarchy of when lighting makes sense. I would like to see that just so we have consistency in applying whatever policies we come up with across the city.
Okay.
Also wondering where that would fit in with city property, city parks. making decisions on lighting within
Yeah.
our parks.
Okay.
Do that as well.
Yeah,
Thanks.
that'd be good.
Thank you.
An overall policy.
All right, well,
review.
thank you, Mr. Rhodes. Thank you, Mr. Hartless. All righty, well, we are moving on to item 4, another update from Ms. Joyce on Stanton's pathway to affordable housing and housing for workforce families, the Shenandoah Regional Housing Study and City of Stanton Housing Strategy. Ms. Beauregard?
I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Joyce, our
Okay.
housing planner.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. For those of you all that don't know me, my name is Rebecca Joyce. I'm the housing planner and grants coordinator. I administer the Community Development Block Grant Program. We're the City of Stanton's an entitlement community, and I just wanted to get that out of the way because that will come up in my presentation today. I wanted to talk to you all about the regional housing study. That was released in January by the Central Shenandoah Planning District Commission, and it's a really wonderful document, and wanted to just give you all some of the information about the region and Stanton. Just as a reminder, as a regional document, it covers Rockingham, Augusta, Rockbridge, Bath and Highland, and the cities of Harrisonburg, Stanton, Waynesboro, Lexington, and Buena Vista. So the data we'll talk about regionally is covering all of that area. And then information for us covers the Stanton, Augusta County, Waynesboro area. So let's see here. Oh, it worked. Okay. The Central Shenandoah Regional Housing Study had regional findings, and then it also had local findings. The study, there's a link at the back of the presentation, which is in your packet. It's also linked in on the city website on the housing page. There's a link. They did a consumer report, and then they did a technical study. The consumer report is designed for anyone to look at. It's very graphically pleasing, has a lot of great information. The technical report is for people like me that need to read it. And it's got lots of information, but not as graphically pleasing. So I wanted to I pulled out just a few statistics from the regional side and from the Stanton, Augusta, Waynesboro side, just to give you a feel for kind of what our region looks like and what the SAW area looks like in terms of housing. So in our region, 71% of our households have at least one worker. Lack of affordable housing, though, does make it hard to recruit and retain employees in our region. 40% of the householders in our region are 60 years or older. And single seniors cannot afford median rent or owner costs and will likely struggle to afford housing if they don't already own it free and clear. So that's something that in the housing world we're looking at and working on. The region has an estimated 265 people comprising 186 households who are unhoused. Not 90% of chronically unhoused people and 10% of non-chronically unhoused people in the region need also other services, or what we call permanent support housing, which means they're given affordable housing and then also provided wraparound services to help them remain stable. If you look at some of the findings for the SAW region, 60% of the SAW MSA's population live and work in the SAW subregion, that's a really good percentage. I was doing some research the other day, and one of the communities in Oregon had a population of a little over 1,000, and only 75 of its citizens were actually able to work in the community and live there. So we're doing a little bit better than that. In our subregion, 37% of our population commutes out of the region. 70% of the SAW households own their own homes. And that statistic is greater in Augusta County. We have more rental units in Stanton and Waynesboro. 42% of Stanton Waynesboro and Augusta households are considered cost burdened. And what that means is the figure we look at is what a person's income is, their housing, including their utilities, and all those kinds of costs should not be over 30% of a person's income. So that's what that means. You're considered cost burdened if you're above that threshold for what you pay for housing and those associated costs. Service worker households in the SAW region, even with 2 earners, are unlikely to access affordable home ownership. So that's a big concern of ours as well. Housing age and condition emerge as a key theme in focus group conversations. And I would like to add that the CSPDC, who Paula works for, did a wonderful job of having stakeholder groups in a lot of the different areas around housing and around the region to get their input in kind of real time feel for what conditions are that they're seeing out there. 43% of all housing in Staunton was built prior to 1960. And I know that also doesn't surprise anyone. One of the issues that some of our citizens deal with, particularly our seniors and our elderly citizens, are they may own their house, but they don't have the ability to keep up with maintenance and repair. And we're trying to focus on being able to keep people in their homes, because then not only does that free up other housing units for other housing people, people always do much better when they're able to stay in their homes. And then we're in what's considered a very tight housing market. We have a residential vacancy rate of between 2 and 3%. Does anybody have any questions about those statistics?
Ms. Joyce,
Yes.
I don't think the slide deck is advancing, just to let you.
I thought it would do it on its own. Thank you. Any other questions about the statistics? Okay, so not only did they give us a feel for what's going on in the region, in our SAW area, they also came up with solutions. And it wasn't just the consultants or the PDC that came up with those solutions. We had several meetings with everyone at the city level individually to talk about what kinds of things we were seeing and what we thought as a city we would like to see to increase our ability to house people. They came up with a set of priority solutions and then also secondary solutions. And I've just got them listed here on the slides, but I've also included in the agenda packet. You'll see them spelled out pretty much in detail and give you ideas of how those can be implemented, who would implement them, and how you would know those are successes. Those are from the consumer report. We have even more detailed help and information in the technical study, and that's going to be really helpful to us. The 2 priority solutions, the first one is leverage upcoming housing survey and strategy efforts to educate residents and strengthen the comprehensive plan update. We're working with the SAW Housing Group in terms of working on educating citizens. We're also working with community development staff that are working on the comprehensive plan to help with the housing section. The housing strategy that I'll discuss in a few minutes, we will also be including that as an appendix to the Staunton Comprehensive Plan. The second priority solution, project quantifiable demand by incomes and housing types to determine what new funding sources are needed. And then the 2 secondary solutions, create alignment between housing and economic development activities and address vacant and blighted properties with evidence-based and revitalization strategies. So this again could not be briefer of a brief about the regional housing study. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything they'd like to say about it? I do urge everyone that's interested in solving housing and working on housing to take a little time to read the consumer report. Like I said, it was very well done and it has a lot of great information and help and solutions. Priority number 2, project quantifiable demand by incomes and housing types to determine what new funding sources are needed. That's government language for trying to look and see what kind of housing stock we have, how affordable is it, and what do we need to do to get more of the right kind of housing here, and how can we use grants and other sources to fund that ability to get that in there.
Excuse me, if you have questions, you can ask Ms. Joyce after she's completed at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Next, I wanted to update you all on the City of Staunton housing strategy. We've been working on that since September, and we've kind of been working on that on our own, but it's very complementary and dovetails not only with the regional housing study and its goals and solutions that it came up with, but also with the SAW Housing Group as well, and then some of our partnering organizations. We have a very robust work group of 18 people, and we meet in the caucus room, so it's more like sardines in there when we're all in there. But we set up a plan. The housing strategy is a planning process and document to get us started in doing more with housing. This is not an answer to all the complex housing problems in the city. As you can see by the illustration on the slide, we're not building the house here. We're just starting to set up the framework for it. So the housing strategy will run through September, and we hope to complete it by the end of April, which probably means May. But it's a 6-month period of intense planning work that we're doing to create this kind of start. We've had 3 meetings of the work group already. We have our next meeting last meeting at the end of this month. Public engagement activities will occur at the end of this month, and in April, we're working out the logistics. We're going to have 2 public meetings at the library. One will be an evening right after work, and another one will be on a Saturday morning. We'll also have one that's by Zoom for people that may have transportation issues or childcare issues or things like that. And then we'll also have a Zoom meeting of stakeholders as well to just get their input. Our strategy goals we've actually started working on those from the very beginning. The work group reviewed over 60 different strategies that other communities have implemented to kind of get an idea of what we would like to see in Staunton and what things we think can really make a difference. And so we came up with 3 goals: produce housing, preserve housing, and provide housing stability. And from those 3 goals, we have draft strategies, and draft means picture a fan blowing the paper all over the place, because these are just things that we're going to be working on, but they may change as we go through public input and other kinds of processes in the planning process. Through the producing housing, we hope to utilize our CDBG funds. We also want to look at being able to create a housing fund. We've already, through the capital improvement plan process, asked for some money to start that. We also want to examine the possibility of having a community land trust or deed restricted home ownership. And in a nutshell, what that means is the property is owned either by a nonprofit or the local government. The house is owned by the person who purchases the house. That enables them to be able to purchase a house for a smaller price and keep it as affordable housing permanently. When they move and sell the house, it is sold to another person for an affordable housing rate. It gives them enough equity so they can either purchase another house with a really good down payment or do other options. It gives them a start to being able to kind of move up that home ownership chain. We also want to look at the possibility of utilizing accessory dwelling units, ones that are either existing here, or if people would like to install those in on their existing properties to create more affordable housing. And that's the little a affordable housing, meaning apartments that, say, a college student might be able to afford, an in-law suite, things like that. The next goal is preserve housing. And as we mentioned from the housing study, we have a lot of older housing stock. Again, we would like to use our CDBG funds towards that. This housing fund that we'd like to create, we'd also like to do some of these kinds of activities where we're helping our housing organizations, our nonprofits that do rehab, to be able to do those. We want to look at some redevelopment strategies in terms of what needs to be rehabbed. Are there blighted properties or things like that that we need to work on? And then we also want to work on landlord education, recruitment, and retention. Through the Housing Authority, we have, and the Community Service Board, we have voucher programs, and those are very helpful for having affordable housing. But a lot of times landlords are a little leery of being part of those programs, and we want to educate them of the assets of being involved in those. And then the last goal we have is to provide housing stability. Again, as we do now, we want to utilize some of our community development block grant funds, utilize the housing fund that we hope to develop. We also want to make sure that anything we do with housing includes those concepts of diversity, equity, inclusion, and fair housing. As a community development block grant entitlement community, fair housing is something that we are required to embrace and make sure happens. And so we wanted to put that in the strategies just to let people know that we want everybody in the city to be able to live here. We also, in the region, the SAW region especially, we don't have what's called a HUD certified housing counselor. And why we would like to see about either being able to have one in this area, to borrow the services from another neighboring locality that provides them, is it allows a lot of home buyers, particularly first-time home buyers, to be eligible for some of the grant programs that come along with that. So having one in our area that is easily accessible for people to be able to go to, we want to explore ways to get someone here. And then our last idea is community housing advocate training. And what that means is there's a lot of misinformation about what it means to own a house, or can I own a house, or that seems too daunting, I don't know what to do. A lot of people won't necessarily trust someone like me or another government official or someone from an agency, but they will trust their neighbor or a friend or someone they go to church with. So what we'd like to do is have a training for our spark plugs in the community and talk to them about what is housing, what kinds of resources do people have, what kinds of things are out there to help. And so then they can go out to the community in their normal community engagement that they do, have the right information, and have resources to point people to where they can get more education and learn about homeownership. So, okay. In order to do all these wonderful things, and again, we've whittled these down from 60 great ideas, we think there's some things we're going to need to have in place. One is a housing commission that would kind of take over from the housing strategy once it's finished and work on the implementation of these ideas, and then tackle some of the more complex housing problems that we face out there. We also would like to have housing conditions windshield survey and assessment done. We look to work with Virginia Housing to get a grant to be able to do that. And the Housing Center at Virginia Tech, I have talked with them. We may have college students participate in doing that, where they will go through the neighborhoods and do an assessment of what properties look like if we have a vacant land that's not being used, or housing that's derelict or blighted, and so that we have a good picture of what our housing looks like. We also want to have a housing and housing stability services grant resource guide, which sounds a lot more complicated than it really is. This basically is going to be a brochure of links to websites and the agencies people need to contact, so that when we talk and do education, we have information to give them to help them be able to do that. The last thing before I finish, just very quickly, this happened this afternoon. We work closely with the Staunton Redevelopment and Housing Authority. And in fact, they are working on a project to replace some of their aging HVAC units in the Housing Authority's housing units through the block grant. And Nehemiah Velez, who's the executive director, has been up on Capitol Hill the past Monday through Wednesday and met with some of our legislative staff. He and other members of the National Association of Housing and Redevelopment officials met with Senator Kane's staff and met with Representative Klein's staff. And I just wanted to let you all know, not only did they talk about housing authorities, he mentioned the great working relationship the Housing Authority has with the city, and also how beneficial the block grant program is to us in providing services to our nonprofits and to keep up our housing stock and other infrastructure for our low to moderate income citizens. Any questions for anyone?
Great work.
Yeah, where do you start? Go
Yeah,
ahead. Vice Mayor Arrowood.
Thank you. Not a question, but I'd like to thank you, Ms. Joyce, for so ably running the housing work group meetings in there. It's and Ms. Beauregard, I think, for putting together the group on that. It's just a very dynamic group of individuals. We have, from our public housing to private developers in there. We have a lot of nonprofits involved in housing represented as well. So there's a lot of good ideas going around. We're trying to find out what we can realistically do as a city to help this along. And Ms. Woods has been along in those meetings as well, too. So it's been, I think, productive, and we're just trying to see what we can produce out of it in the end.
So just with your slides, the importance of the CDBG opportunities, and notwithstanding potentially some of the unknowns with that program at a federal level, we are an entitlement community. So we
Yes.
are guaranteed a certain amount
Yes.
each year.
Yes.
But at the same time, we are not eligible for certain specific grants as an entitlement community. So as part of the entitlement community, we are required to have a 5-year plan.
Yes.
So how flexible is that 5-year plan in terms of adjusting to meet the needs that we may identify?
I think it's very flexible. We try to create our goals in that plan to really be general and flexible enough that we can justify different projects under that. So far, anything I've heard anybody mention in the work groups or any of the other housing meetings and things I've been a part of would be eligible with that.
And then one more question related to the Community Trust Fund.
Yes.
So the last update we got on that was from the Community Foundation, just kind of an overview of the program. Have we engaged in discussions with the state program on that yet? And furthermore, are we at a point yet where we're starting to look at potential properties in either the city or just partnering with our neighbor localities that could be applicable?
Yes, that's a good question. The land trust situation right now, where we are with the Saw Housing Group and the Community Foundation, the Community Foundation is working with one property owner in Staunton who's willing to be like a pilot or a test case. The issue we've come up with is that person's house may be valued a little bit higher than what we would need to be able to do it in a land trust that would be affordable enough for someone to purchase. So right now, we're still looking at other communities and seeing what programs might work. We don't have any properties identified yet, but everyone is very enthusiastic about that program. The one concern that I have, and I've mentioned this in meetings and things, is the the homeowner, the person living in the house, pays for the house. The land trust owns the land. The homeowner, though, also not only pays for the insurance and taxes on the house, they also pay the taxes and the insurance for the land. And that's a little bit tricky, I think, of a negotiation in terms of people being able to afford it. But I don't know, and we as the Saw Housing Group don't know enough yet to see what would work, again, because we haven't gotten an ideal property. I think once we have our windshield survey done and we kind of know what we're looking at here in the city, that'll give us a better idea of other potential properties that we might want to work on.
For the land trust, wouldn't we have to have oversight for that as well? Like a committee
Yes.
that would oversee it and how we figured out what that would look like?
There's a couple of ways that can be done. It can either be done through the government itself, or it can be a nonprofit organization. And Mr. Campbell was talking about the Virginia Statewide Land Trust. We have met with them through Zoom, and they've talked about their program. If a locality doesn't feel like they have the capacity to form their own land trust, you can go through them and properties can be put in that. So that's another viable option.
Access wouldn't be an issue.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about increasing the stock of housing, how does this plan figure in with working directly with developers at all? What role do they play?
In terms of our housing strategy?
In terms of engaging with them to actually
Do
be
that.
able to build here and
Yes.
turn a profit and want to build here.
We're primarily looking at affordable housing. And from my understanding of other community staff, development staff who can correct me at any minute, most of the developable land for larger developments and things like that has already been purchased. So we're looking at more of the low-hanging fruit of the single lots,
Yeah.
maybe smaller cottage type developments and things like that.
Right.
So I think we're working through this process that'll be finished this spring, and the implementation for the goals that we've come up with is a window of like 18 months. So our thought is once a housing commission is formed, then that would be the place to develop those relationships that would be more long-term and that kind of thing. So
In the long term as well, land currently held in ag forestals is part of the discussion as well, underlying zoning for that and how we could work that in.
The recommendations are still in draft form. Is there anything that is crystallized enough where it could be potentially included in this budget cycle?
well, that's why we asked for funding in the capital improvement plan for the housing fund. Most of the things that we have in this planning process for the housing strategy are funded or have grant funding possibilities. So I think the next step when we have the Housing Commission and we start to go after more complex goals, that's when that will become an issue. But I won't turn down any funding.
Yeah. Any further questions from council?
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Joyce,
you.
very much. And for anybody who's interested in seeing these slides, they are on our agenda packet. If you go to our website, or you can, I imagine if you look at presentations to city council, but they are on our website under the agenda. Okay, so this takes us to item 5. Our final work session item, a closed meeting for number 1, consultation with legal counsel for legal advice related to land use designations and approvals for a parcel of property fronting Johnson Street, and 2, discussion of the performance of the city manager. I will now entertain a motion to enter a,
City attorney.
oh geez, I'm so sorry. I looked right at it.
We could talk about.
So
her,
we could
too.
talk, yeah.
Yeah.
With the city attorney. Thank you, Mr. Blair. I'll entertain a motion for a closed meeting.
Sure. Madam Mayor, I move to enter a closed meeting for consultation with legal counsel for the city attorney for legal advice related to land use designations and approvals for a parcel of property fronting on Johnson Street pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A8 and discussion of the performance of the city attorney pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A1.
Thank,
Second,
is there any further discussion? Mr. Kesker, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Shepherd,
Aye.
Ms. Park,
Aye.
Mr. Overholzer,
aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Arrowood,
Aye.
Mayor Edwards.
Aye.
Motion carries.
We are now in closed session. We will see you back here at 7 PM. Thank you all. We're good? Thank you. All righty, I will now entertain a motion to reconvene in an open meeting.
Madam Mayor,
Counselor Overholzer.
I move that council reconvene in an open meeting and certify to the best of each member's knowledge that only lawfully exempted public business matters were discussed, and that only public business matters as identified in the closed meeting session were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting.
Is there a second?
For a second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion from members of council? Okay, Mr. Kesker, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Overholzer,
Aye.
Ms. Park,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Arrowood,
Aye.
Mayor Edwards.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All righty, the work session is now adjourned. And it is 7 o'clock, and I'd like to call the March 13th, 2025 regular meeting of the Staunton City Council to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America,
to the republic for which it
stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Well, tonight's invocation will be brought to us by Councilwoman Park.
Good evening. Between the tariffs, which have prompted escalating trade wars, cuts to agencies such as USAID, which buys about $2 billion worth of American farm products annually, and the recent elimination of 2 USDA programs that allowed food banks and schools to purchase $1 billion worth of food from local farms, our farmers and farm workers, especially here in the Valley, have been heavy on my mind and heart. I offer this prayer by Cesar Chavez, prayer of the farm workers' struggle, in honor of all the men and women who provide so much to America. Show me the suffering of the most miserable, so I will know my people's plight. Free me to pray for others, for you are present in every person. Help me take responsibility for my own life so that I can be free at last. Grant me courage to serve others, for in service there is true life. Give me honesty and patience so that I can work with other workers. Bring forth song and celebration so that the Spirit will be alive among us. Let the Spirit flourish and grow so that we will never tire of the struggle. Let us remember those who have died for justice, for they have given us life. Help us love even those who hate us so we can change the world. Amen.
Thank you, Councilwoman Park. So this brings us to the mayor's report. I only have a couple things this evening. I wanted to share an interesting experience I had with Councilwoman Park. I was able to have a ride-along with an officer from our police department. And so I had a ride-along with Officer Kyer, and she is an 8-year member of the Staunton Police Department. And I would say in the first hour of that ride, it was just nonstop excitement. And then it got better from there. It was, you just really getting a firsthand experience of what they do, even for such a short period of time, just gave me even more respect for our officers. And I was very grateful for that. I also attended with several members of council a community Shabbat at the Temple House of Israel last Friday, and it was a wonderful experience. Also, our city manager was there. Very well attended. People came out and celebrated that service together. And I think I will end there because there are a lot of other things I think folks want to share, but would counselors have anything they would like to share?
I was at the community Shabbat as well, and I'll just echo your statement.
Mhm.
It's terrific whenever we can have an interfaith gathering and just affirm and support each other. It's an opportunity for education. They sort of walked us through the ritual and explained things. The temple historian was there and had a really nice conversation with her. So it was a terrific event, and I appreciated that opportunity.
And Councilman Overholzer invited me to the Kiwanis, and that was wonderful. Can you,
Sure, we updated them on current issues before the council, the budget. I talked about environmental issues and opportunities for people to engage with us, including the comprehensive plan, that ongoing process, and we answered questions. It's always fun to go to civic groups and talk with them and share, break bread, and
exactly.
discuss together.
Thank you.
Well, let's see. Couple Sundays ago, I was at the Newtown neighborhood event, and there was a presentation by our own Willow Hughes back there about the Gypsy Hill Stream restoration there. She answered everyone's questions very thoroughly. It was great. She was being monopolized by people at the end, so I didn't get to tell you good job
Oh.
then. But let's see, and I had a chance to walk up on the upper part of the wharf this afternoon, and I saw that work is ongoing on the Sears Hill Bridge right now. They're putting in the black locust treads on the steps there and going up across. And the gentleman's opinion that we're working on is that black locust is what you use for this, and it lasts a long time. So it's good to see that happening now.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Airwood. Anyone else? All righty. Moving along then. Item A, the consent agenda. Per procedure memorandum number 14, it's the policy of the City Council to have routine, non-controversial items placed on a consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda will be voted on in one motion. If separate discussion of an item is requested by any member of council, that item shall be removed and considered separately at the end of the regular meeting agenda. Do any members of council wish to remove any items from the consent agenda placed at the end of the regular meeting agenda? Hearing none, I will now entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman
I
Marks.
move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? Mr. Kisker, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Overholzer,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Ms. Park,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Arrowood,
Aye.
Mayor Edwards.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Kisker. We will now move on to item B, a public hearing and consideration of amendments to Title 18 zoning of the Staunton City Code to revise references to the recently amended Title 13 environmental. Ms. Beauregard.
Tim Hartless, Planning Manager, will walk through this item this evening.
All righty. Good evening, Mr. Hartless.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. This is what I would consider a housekeeping matter. Recently, City Council amended Title 13 environmental of the city code. And there are two references in the zoning code that reference sections of Title 13, and they need to be updated so that we're referencing the correct sections. One of them is a reference to a portion of Title 13 that's no longer part of the code, so it needs to be deleted. And then the others reference that section of Title 13 is moved and we need to update it, so we're referencing the correct section. This is technically a code amendment, so it does require a public hearing. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for a member of council? No, sir. All righty. In a moment, I will open up the public hearing. This is a time that council sets aside to hear from citizens and others about the specific topic on the agenda. We ask that you please give your name, your address, and then keep your remarks at 5 minutes or less. When you reach the 5-minute time limit, I will let you know that your time limit has expired. For our Zoom participants, please raise your hand now if you wish to speak on this particular public hearing. If you raise your hand during this public hearing, you will also have the opportunity to raise your hand during this city council meeting for other public hearings and matters from the public. Once everyone who wishes to speak has had an opportunity, I will close the public hearing. I will now open the public hearing, so if you wish to speak, please approach the podium and we will alternate between individuals physically present and those who have their hands raised via the Zoom platform. Again, this is only for item B. Would anyone like to speak? Mr. Kessiker, is anyone in line?
No, ma'am, we have no hands raised online.
Righty. I will then entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor,
Oh, I'm so sorry.
oh, this is a
I'm-
public hearing. No public hearing, then,
Oh, the public hearing is now
Close it.
closed. I'm sorry. I didn't.
sorry.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion.
Madam Mayor, I
Councilwoman
move
Woods.
that city council adopt the ordinance and approve the amendments as recommended by the planning commission.
A second.
Thank you. Are there any further discussion by councilors? All righty, Mr. Kessiker, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Shepherd.
Aye.
Ms. Park,
Aye.
Ms. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Overholzer,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Arrowood,
Aye.
Mayor Edwards.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us on to item C, an update on flood mitigation efforts, tunnel survey, and structural evaluation work resulting in partial closure of Wharf parking lot and closures of Byers Street. Presenting will be Ms. Beauregard.
Hello?
Good evening.
Good evening. Okay. Taking lots of deep breaths this past.
Yeah.
Okay. We just wanted to give a brief update on what has happened the last week. It has only been a week. It's felt like forever since some things came to our attention. And I don't have the, oh yeah, I do have the controller. Okay.
Mhm.
I just want to take everybody back in time though to 4.5 years ago when the twin floods of 2020, as they're called. And this is August 8th. This is what the wharf looked like on the evening of August 8th. That was not any fun. 2 weeks later, this happened. So August was a busy month in 2020. And going forward from there, the city started to look at mitigation efforts, primarily how do we mitigate flooding downtown. On September 10th, which is just a few weeks after those events happened, City Council directed staff to engage a consultant to perform a study to present solutions to alleviate flooding. On May 21st, that study was completed and presented to council, and anybody who heard that study that night, it had a lot in there. It was tens of millions of dollars. It was not feasible. It had a lot of things in there that people didn't like, such as tearing down historic structures. So council directed staff to come back with some more feasible immediate initiatives, which happened in August of 2021. That included, and I'm building up to why we're here tonight, the tunnel maintenance and improvements, which had 3 areas of focus: structural, hydraulic, and legal. And in the box there, this is directly from the Wiley-Wilson study. You have immediate initiatives identified, such as evaluate structural soundness, identifying utilities and how they can be relocated, identifying debris, planning for future access points for better access to the tunnels, and then planning for existing debris removal. So how could we maximize the tunnels, basically? That's where that was kind of going. And then in September 2022, council allocated ARPA funds for the tunnel study, and that got the ball rolling on that. So we had funding to do the study identified and appropriated. So I'm going to embarrass Willow. But she shouldn't be embarrassed because she did a great job. This happens to be Flood Awareness Week. I mean, all these things are kind of converging on each other. She did a wonderful, how can I do this? Are you going to do it for me? There we go. This is a very short clip I just want to show, and it was a wonderful interview that Willow gave to WHSV about Flood Awareness Week. and the actions that we've taken.
This week
so
is
far.
Flood Awareness Week in Virginia, which, according to the Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, is the most common and costly natural disaster.
Olivia Whitehouse spoke with the city of Staunton about the city's history of flooding and improvements to help warn residents of potential floods.
In 2020, Staunton experienced 2 back-to-back floods that caused costly damage to the city. Willow Hughes, Staunton's environmental program specialist, says the floods in 2020 caused about $3 million in damage.
We had a flood study commissioned right afterwards, and some of the solutions come up with were a little costly, so we've been working on things we can do here and now, which is why we've implemented our flood sensor system.
The flood awareness system was installed in the city in June 2023.
So we have 10 locations throughout the city that have a sensor stationed either to record the depth of the stream there or to record the amount of precipitation received in the rain gauge. And those are connected to a dashboard. They report every 10 minutes.
These sensors can indicate that there is a flood, and residents can sign up to receive alerts when there is flooding.
Most of our downtown actually sits right in the floodplain. The stream is actually buried underneath most of the buildings or roads. We have 2 streams that kind of enter downtown in tunnels, and when those tunnels reach capacity, unfortunately, it causes a lot of flooding.
Hughes says when there is a risk of flooding, it is important to be aware of what is going on and to be prepared.
Do your best to prepare your property in the ways that you can so that the impact to your own property can be mitigated as best as possible.
Working hard for you, Olivia Whitehouse, WHSV.
Great. So that was just a reminder of the great things we have done. Actually, we've done a lot with the sensors, which has been a great success. The tunnels have proven to be a little more complicated. We knew it was going to be costly. And here we are. So Wiley Wilson, again, they have been under contract to perform the tunnel survey and structural evaluation and to explore those tunnel conditions. And they started that last week. A few days after they started, we received information about several areas of concern, and then we informed the public that we were concerned enough to close down portions of Byer Street. And at first, we closed the entire wharf lot until we could create the other entrance off Byer Street into the western portion of the wharf parking lot. And then there's an altered pattern on Johnson Street, you've probably noticed, because there's an area, here's a map. There's an area on Johnson that goes a few feet out from the sidewalk, part of that sidewalk, and then a little bit of the road that we are asking that we would like cars to kind of avoid that area too. So you probably saw this map. If you saw our press release, these are the areas of concern at the moment. What do we not know? I started with this slide rather than what we do know. We don't know the extent of repairs yet. We don't know the cost and how to fund. We have already been talking to, for instance, the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. We've talked to the Planning District Commission, looking at a combination of local dollars, grants. We even looking at, do we take out bonds? We just don't know until we know the cost, obviously, but we're kind of exploring every single option depending on the extent of the repairs and how that plays out. We don't know the timeline of starting emergency repairs and how long they will take. And then even getting beyond emergency repairs, what are the longer term plans for creeks and tunnel systems and strategic flood mitigation? That's a lot not to know, I realize. What we do know, that Wiley Wilson is continuing to evaluate areas of concern, and they're continuing their evaluation up Central Avenue to the north and to the east to New Street. For the moment, downtown parking and traffic flow will stay as they are until we know more, but they will stay as they are for now. I did speak to the farmers market folks, and they will be in that western lot in a few weeks, understanding though that if construction occurs and they have to leave that space for some period of time, they'll need a plan B. So we're helping them work through that, but rest assured, the first weekend in April, there will be a farmers market downtown. And then updates will be provided as soon as we have them and are able to share them. I would just like to send a huge thanks to the quick thinking and creative staff of all these departments. this was the speediest effort in the world, I think, to create another entrance to a parking lot. But I think they did a great job. I think it looks like it belonged there forever. That was Public Works. And I think when this is all said and done, they're going to keep that as an opening and bollard it, because it's always nice to have that option for special events or for the farmer's market or whatever. Also want to thank Economic Development, the police department, obviously, for their help with clearing the wharf lot that evening, that first evening a week ago, our city attorney, and of course, our folks in the city manager's office and communications. And lastly, I know if you're a local business downtown or on the wharf, you're wondering, oh my goodness. Luckily, again, we have the wharf parking lot, half of it is available. I like what some of the local businesses have done in terms of making sure their customers know that. So I really appreciate them doing that on their social media posts. But I want to do a quick plug for the local business retention survey. And this is your chance as a business to provide input to the city. It's open until March 31st. We'd like you to share your insights, and you can share your insights about this, what's going on. We'd like to hear from you. If you go onto our main webpage, you'll find the survey. So that's another tool. So we really want to hear from folks. And as we learn about more of how long this might be going on for, what alterations need to be made downtown to accommodate repairs or anything else, we will, as quickly as we can, communicate this to the public, to the businesses directly, to make sure that they don't see any change in their business downtown. And we certainly don't want that to happen. So that being said, that's really all I have to report out this evening. I could take a question. I'm not sure I'll be able to answer your question, but I'm happy to take any comments or questions at this time. And if I can answer them, I will do that.
Questions from council?
Has there been any discussion with Public Works yet now that the initial issue has been resolved? Given that this is likely a somewhat mid to long-term issue, replacing the barrels on Johnson Street with something more appropriate, like they're called flex post delineators, little narrow rods.
I will have to talk to them about that, because it was the cones and now it's the barrels. And I thought maybe we were talking about the water-filled barriers, but depending on how long this goes on for, we will have to look at another alternative, surely. And we'll figure that out once we understand better a timeline. Because you're right, if we're looking at months and months and months, that can't stay there like that. So we'll be talking to them.
Any anecdotal evidence or thoughts from the business community about parking? I mean, when I came, I guess it was last Friday. I mean, obviously the garage was visibly more full, but any concerns about capacity in the garage?
Personally, I have not heard anything, which is, I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think it doesn't open an interesting opportunity to look at our parking situation downtown.
Right.
So that will be on our plate as well. Because I know we've been talking about parking for a very, very long time, going back to the parking study that was done many, many years ago. So I can say honestly, we will be dusting that off to see what could happen. And so this is an interesting time to kind of study what's happening with parking downtown, and we'll take advantage of that situation.
Without specifics yet from Wiley Wilson and all that, you had said before that it's perfectly safe for pedestrian traffic across the eastern side of the wharf.
Yes, people can walk in the eastern side of the wharf.
Okay, yeah, because I mean, it looks dramatic down there, all blocked
It
off.
does
So
look
you can just walk all over it just fine. We're just out of, as you said, an abundance of caution. We're just being sure.
Correct.
Yeah, because
We don't want cars on it at this time.
Yeah, so you don't feel like it's an imminent thing. I mean, the day before there were cars on it, and we're just trying to be extra safe on this before we can evaluate everything.
That's a good way to put it. I mean, this is really out of an abundance of caution and listening to what Wiley Wilson was telling us.
Right.
Yep.
Any other questions, comments?
Yeah, just looking for any other specifics that will help us quantify the level of risk in terms of time, how long will it last? What type of traffic will it bear? What was the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of their recommendation to not allow traffic? Any more specifics? Maybe that's not available, but.
I would say that's not available right now and it's all still being evaluated.
Yeah, I have a, once we get into talking to the engineers, I have a whole lot of questions, but
Yeah. But I have a feeling we'll be updating you and the public often for a while on this.
Right.
Often and frequently. So,
Okay.
and sharing as much detail as we can at any given time.
One more question on the direction the slide provided on where the investigation or structural review will continue. So is everything from Middlebrook down to the wharf that's already been evaluated?
Yes. Correct.
Well, thank you, Ms. Beauregard, for
Thank you.
bringing this to us and just keeping us updated. And I will wait for you because you're on the next item as well. This brings us to matters from the city manager, Ms.
I
Beauregard.
think I've said enough this evening. I really don't have anything else. I just wanted to plug the business survey at the end. So
Nothing.
I'm good for this evening. Thank you.
All righty, terrific.
do we have a tentative date for Sears Hill completion on that, if they're actively
I'm
working?
looking at Josh.
They have not said a date. They were
Okay.
hoping to knock it out quickly, but.
Yeah. Well, I can say today they're making good progress.
If you didn't, nobody heard that, at least through next week. And I think they were maybe struggling to work with the railroad a little bit. So,
Okay.
but I'm just happy it's happening so that something is working over there. It would be so nice to have the Sears Hill Bridge back online,
Sure.
but it's coming very soon.
All righty. Moving on to matters from the public. This part of the city council's agenda is entitled Matters from the Public. It is a time that city council sets aside to hear from citizens and others about a wide variety of subjects. A copy of the Staunton City Council's Matters from the Public rules are available in paper form at the clerk's desk and online at the City of Staunton's webpage. You're asked to familiarize yourself with those rules before commenting. Please come to the podium or begin your call, identify yourself, and complete your remarks within 5 minutes. As a reminder, this is a time for City Council to listen. If you would like an answer to a question or a follow-up to your comment, please speak with the city manager, Leslie Beauregard, after the meeting. Please come to the podium.
Randolph Burton, 211 Hendron Avenue.
Good evening.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council, for the opportunity to address you this evening. I'm a member of Staunton's Lewis Creek Watershed Advisory Committee. As some of you are aware, our committee has been taking a close look at the possibility of daylighting Lewis Creek and Gum Springs Branch in the wharf parking lot area, where they have been buried underground for longer than most of you have been alive. If you're not aware, daylighting is the process of bringing back to light and to life a previously buried stream. I listened with interest to the update on the infrastructure issues affecting the existing culverts presented by our city manager. Given the immediate structural concerns, plus the ongoing need to mitigate flooding, specifically in that area, I urge you in the strongest terms to take this opportunity to explore the possibility of daylighting the streams there. First of all, with daylighting and thoughtful placing of embankments and flood benches, and including suitable vegetation, the site will be able to handle more water flow through the area than buried culverts. This will help mitigate flooding and successfully protect businesses in a greater number of heavy or intense rainfall events. You can't eliminate flooding, but you can reduce the severity and frequency. Second, daylighting the streams will provide for healthier water quality and improved biodiversity. Third, it can considerably reduce summer temperatures in the immediate vicinity, turning a heat island into an oasis. Fourth, if done well, you have an incredible opportunity to transform the site into a beautiful multi-use space that can serve as a focal point for the whole community, support businesses in the area, and draw additional visitors to the city. Because the city already owns the land and no buildings need to be removed other than a almost never used toll booth, costs for daylighting are likely to be comparable to the cost of replacing culverts, perhaps even less. And also, given the need to replace the Lewis Creek sanitary sewers that were included in the CIP in that part of the wharf, substantial savings can be realized by combining these projects, making it even more affordable. As some of you know, our commission worked with a group from JMU last year to imagine a variety of possibilities for the wharf site, which were presented with an exhibition to the public, which received the results quite enthusiastically. I know several of you were able to attend to see what they came up with. We are working with a new group of JMU students again this semester, and we'll see what they come up with. We also met with business owners and property owners around the wharf to hear their concerns. So we've already been having some dialogue with different members of the city. There are many activities the city will need to undertake in order to successfully transform the wharf into another jewel in the crown of the Queen City. The Lewis Creek Watershed Advisory Committee looks forward to working with council, with city staff, and with the whole Staunton community to help make this happen. As a next step, I urge you to pass the upcoming CIP budget that includes a proposed study about daylighting the creeks under the wharf parking lot, and hopefully get that underway as soon as possible. I'm happy to provide any of you with additional information to help you understand more about daylighting. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Burton. You still have 36 seconds. Thank you so much. Mr. Kessinger, do we have anyone on
We have
Zoom?
no hands raised.
All righty, would you please approach the podium? Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Good evening. My name's Lou Ann Lynch, and I am a member of the commission, the Youth Commission, and I'm also I was a school counselor for many years for Augusta County. I'm here to urge you to please pass and approve the budget for the Office on Youth, which is 215,752, 215,752. I urge you to please make a full approval of their budget request. When I worked for Augusta County, I was a school counselor, and the Office on Youth was our resource. And I can speak for many school counselors. In fact, I spoke to a school counselor today about the services that the Office on Youth provide. One of the resources they provide is called Check and Connect. It's for truancy in our schools. If we can't get the kids to school, they can't learn anything. And I just have a couple of statistics. Kate Collins' truancy rate is 42%. Shelburne's is 38%. The national average is 16%. So what the Office on Youth, if we have a student that was missing so many days, we would meet with the parents, and their parents were like, I don't know what to do. We would call Office on Youth. They would provide services to the family, mentors to the students. So they were our go-to for the truancy. And I, as a school counselor, I met with parents. We had truancy meetings every week. So it's a really great resource for the school counselors. Also, the Office on Youth supports the juvenile crime control. So if we had a student that was wearing an ankle bracelet, they would be our person that we would call and say, so, what's going on? And they were our resource there. They were part of the village. Also, they offered meetings on individual students. We would have in-school meetings, and they would say, we need to get community members involved. We would contact Office on Youth, and they had all the resources in the city and the county. They would bring us all together, and we'd make a plan. They were called FAPT meetings. And It was great because we would have our school resources, but the Office on Youth always had the community resources. They come in and they do classroom guidance on family life. They do so many things. They have a community emotion bus that goes out every week to different communities, and they work with the parents in that community, in their neighborhood, to sign up, help them sign up for preschool or school. They have, the library participates, and they have school books, library books. So, we all talk about how it takes, a village to, with our kids and with our community. And I think the Office on Youth is a really vital resource. And I urge you to approve their full request for funding this year.
Thank you,
you
Ms.
for your
Lynch.
time. Oh, and thank you for your work here, because I know it's a lot of hard work. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lynch. Mr. Kesker, is there anyone on Zoom?
We have no hands raised.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening, council members. My name is Hunter Gregory. I'm a resident of Staunton, Virginia, as well as a student of Mary Baldwin. I come to you today partially because I really want a good grade in my state and local government class, and part of that was following up on a previously mentioned issue brought before you all, as I chose Staunton City Council to be my local governmental body that I would follow for this semester. Recently, you all mentioned in a work meeting discussions of a project for Edgewood Sidewalk project, as well as discussions for some roundabout I believe, along Richmond Avenue. While I think the addition of new sidewalks and new roundabouts are overall great for this community, I also caution you all to consider the state of the current sidewalks and crosswalks in our downtown section. As someone who often has to walk to class to save a little gas money, and especially living as close to campus as I do to get to my job at the library, I have found recently that the state of the crosswalk indicators is not up to par, especially in a community who also hosts the Virginia School for the Deaf and Blind. Our crosswalk indicators, when we have them, and we often do not have them at the crosswalks, the tactile button press does not work on some of them, which for someone with a visual impairment would make it impossible to know if you have pressed the button. Also, for someone with a visual impairment, our crosswalk indicators have no audible or auditory indicator. Oftentimes in other cities, when you press a crosswalk button, you'll hear an indicator that says the crosswalk is on, the cross sign is on, you may walk. We do not have those. I think that we need to consider that. Again, I want our community to be inclusive. The Visual Light in downtown Staunton often provides caption audio for people who have an auditory impairment or an auditory processing impairment, my apologies. And if they cannot get safely to that theater, there's no way for them to enjoy those movies. Also, our crosswalks are oftentimes painted on or are cobblestone. And the state of the cobblestone crosswalks, they often have gaps or cracks or the grout and the cobblestone pieces don't fit quite right. So if you are using a walker or a cane or even a wheelchair, it makes it really difficult to get across those points safely. I also would say in areas in which we have painted on lines, having some sort of tactile indicator for canes or walkers to brush against so they know which direction that they're going would be a good investment. I know that it would be an economic investment, but I think with the history that Staunton has with the Virginia School for the Deaf and Blind and our desire to be an inclusive community so that everyone can enjoy these things, I think overall it would just make it safer, not only for those who have visual impairments or auditory impairments, just in general. We live in an age of technology, and I can admit sometimes I get a little distracted at a crosswalk and I look down at my phone, and then the crosswalk has already gone off and it doesn't last very long. So then you're rushing, and that's very dangerous on a road, so don't do that. I would also say that some of the lights, if you are walking home late at night from the downtown area, those lights, I know that we're trying to conserve and be more mindful of the lights that we have, so we tamp down on light pollution. Some of those lights, though, are for someone like me, walking in the dark at 11 p.m. is very scary. And I would just caution that we find a solution to make it easier. I know that for the most part, our lights along North Augusta are fine, but when you go back a road, they kind of just shut off. And it's when you're just walking in the middle of the street at 11 p.m. and they suddenly shut off, that's kind of intimidating. But thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you for being
Yes.
here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Kesker, is there anyone online?
No, ma'am, we have no hands raised.
Would anyone else like to speak this evening? Alrighty, thank you very much. This will take us to item D. Final regular meeting item, which is a closed meeting for consultation with legal counsel for legal advice related to property ownership and discussion of an award of public contracts for engineering and construction services where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the city of Staunton. I will now entertain a motion to enter a closed meeting.
I move to enter a closed meeting for consultation with legal counsel from the city attorney for legal advice related to real property ownership pursuant to Virginia Code 2.2-3711A8 and discussion of the award of a city contract for engineering and construction services where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the city of Staunton.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Counselor Woods. Is there any further discussion? All right, Mr. Kesker, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Overholzer,
Aye.
Miss Park,
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Arrowood,
Aye.
Mayor Edwards.
Aye.
Motion carries.
We are now in closed session. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here.
Hello?
Hello. I will
Okay.
now entertain a motion to come out of closed meeting.
Madam Mayor,
Counselor Woods.
I move that council reconvene in an open meeting and certify to the best of each member's knowledge that only lawfully exempted public business matters were discussed and only that only public business matters as identified in a closed meeting motion were heard, discussed, or considered in the meeting.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Say no.
Let's talk about it for a while.
No.
All righty. Mr. Kesker, would you please call the roll?
Miss Park,
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd,
Aye.
Miss Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Campbell,
Aye.
Mr. Overholzer,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Arrowood,
Aye.
Mayor Edwards.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
This meeting of the Staunton City Council is now adjourned.